Thank you. Thank you to Milti Olelo for inviting me. It's been a while since I've given a talk in the brown bag, so it's nice to get back, have a good excuse to do this. Today, I would like to talk to you about technology and pragmatics in research and practice. And I want to do this because in diverse settings where there's a lot of cross-cultural communication, like Hawaii, and when a lot of communication uses digital channels, the integration of technology and pragmatics is not just pedagogically important. To me, it's socially necessary. I hope to convince you today that teaching and learning the pragmatics of a second language or a foreign language is actually essential for our students' successful interactional practices. So what is pragmatics and why is it important to teach it? Anybody has an idea what pragmatics is? We'll try to do this as interactive as possible. Anybody? Any words associated with pragmatics? Those of you online, you can usually use the chat. Yeah?
Language with context.
Yes, context is a big word in pragmatics. Anything else?
Appropriately.
Okay, appropriately is another huge word also in pragmatics.
Pragmatics is politeness.
Yes, politeness also. Yeah, basically pragmatics is the study of language in use. So having pragmatic competence in a language means to know what to say to whom, in what circumstances, and how to say it. So in order to be able to do this, we need to have a notion of what are the pragmatic rules of a language or norms, right? It's not as strict as rules, but what are the pragmatic norms of a language? We also need to know how to realize those norms. What is the language that comes associated with those norms? We also need to know the interactional practices because we know conversation is fluid and people need to interpret and reinterpret all of the situations during our conversation. But pragmatics is not only about what to say, but also how we say it and what we do when we are saying it, especially across languages and practices. So in places where conversation crosses the cultural and digital borders, pragmatic competence is really an academic concern, right? In a daily reality and in a socio-political reality that we have today, it's super important to have pragmatic competence. So something that may seem really simple, like a greeting, it's really not that simple once we start considering the contextual factors. And very good, the word context came up, right? So what kind of contextual factors are involved? Who are the people involved? Where are they? What are they doing? What is their previous knowledge of each other's cultural backgrounds? What do they understand that conversation is about, right? And all of these, they are gestures, but they're as important as the language itself, right? I think only we understand what that means from Obama, right? That has a lot of meaning. All right, so what about in a second language? Having pragmatic competence of another language, right, means being able to understand, communicate, and interact with others, given the context of the interaction, the realization between participants, their relation, their physical settings, their linguistic, social, cultural, and historical backgrounds, and also their ideologies and identities. So how do they actually understand those situations? So our learners need to keep in mind a lot of factors when entering a conversation, right? And this is not an easy thing to do. Okay, in addition to be able to produce language, we also need to be able to understand beyond the literal meaning of words or a sentence or an utterance. So not just what it say, but what is meant, what it's implied, but what someone says. So if we see this message, right, we need the context to be able to interpret what it means, right? What do we not know exactly if we don't know the context in that message? Anybody?
7 a.m. or p.m.
Right, 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. What else? Where is there? Right, there, where, right? What else?
Who is you?
Who is you, right? Well, we can assume that you is the person reading it, but maybe not. Maybe it's a roommate that passed by the refrigerator note. And what else? Exo is something cultural, and one more. What are they gonna do there? Yeah, but also I. Who is I? Who wrote the note? Right? We find this note in a refrigerator. Who is I? Right? So you see that in 7 words, 6 of them require context to understand it. Right? This is really difficult for students, right? And not just for beginner students, even advanced students have issues with understanding implicature. Lots of research on this. So when we interpret language, we need to deal consistently with power, with language ideology, with accountability. And this is actually a problem that is exacerbated in our society today, right? Having language accountability and also not doing harm through language is something that is a big issue in our society today. We're going to talk a little bit about microaggressions. How many of you have heard some of these before? How many of you? Raise your hands. Okay, how many of you online? All right, see a few there. Okay, so yes, this is actually something that we experience all the time. There are students experience all the time, students that go study abroad, and especially when students have when they're more competent in the language that they are speaking. In this case, is for English, right? So these are called microaggressions. Microaggressions are cowardly acts denigrating an individual by targeting perceived social aspects of their identity. And these comments may or may not have an intention to offend, but in societies that are marked by deep ideological divides, and this can be over race, over identity, over gender, these microaggressions often serve as a linguistic site of conflict. So some speakers may think that these are just harmless jokes or just comments, right? But for other people, these are cumulative forms of social injustice. So microaggressions are implicatures, so they require inference, but they can also be denied. You can say, oh, I didn't mean that, or, oh, I wasn't trying to offend you, right? That's what it comes one of these afterwards if we make a face. So these microaggressions fit perfectly in a space where harm can be inflicted, but intention can be denied. And this is actually a reflection also of our social-political context right now. A lot of public figures do controversial statements, and they build in plausible deniability in it. So it creates a communicative environment where power operates through ambiguity. This is important for our students to understand, right? So microaggressions are deeply rooted into pragmatics because they are offensive in nature, right? They don't have a literal meaning. The meaning is based on the intention, right? And what the person means to say. They can be interpreted, they have to be interpreted through social and common norms. So there has to be a context around it for it to become a microaggression. They violate maxims of cooperative principles, especially when the person gets their face threatened. And they rely on presuppositions that reflect stereotypes, like assuming someone cannot do a job because of their gender or their race. Yeah, they fall in the same field. This is actually a topic that is being studied in a lot of different fields, like educational policy, philosophy, social psychology. So applied linguistics is a little bit behind on the study of microaggressions, but I think as language teacher practitioners, like, either researchers or teachers, we can really not ignore these type of issues. So I come back to ask what I was asking at the beginning is, in the little bit of time that we have with our students, why should we invest any time on teaching pragmatics? Well, we want the students to be able to understand beyond the literal meaning of utterances. We want them to understand phenomena such as microaggressions and how to respond to it. But also from research, we know that grammatical errors are usually attributed to the linguistic competence of the speaker. But pragmatic errors are attributed to their personality. So someone that is, an intermediate speaker has enough good language. If they make a pragmatic error, we usually hear things like, oh, that person is rude. Oh, all of these Americans, they're all so rude, right? And many of those are actually have to do with the pragmatic development of that student, right? We know that they affect communication greatly, and they're more important than phonetic, lexical, or grammatical errors, which they are not as threatening for the conversation. Also, L2 pragmatics fosters intercultural communication, which we know is really important, and especially right now where we are so polarized around issues of immigration and race, right? We need to understand others and understand how others perceive themselves in society. And also understanding the pragmatic norms of another language promotes respect, empathy, and social integration. And it can actually help fight isolationist trends because it promotes language learning as civic engagement, as global connections with others. So pretty important reasons, I think. So if we decide that yes, it's good to teach pragmatics, how do we teach pragmatics? Well, most people think that study abroad is where pragmatics are learned. And this is true if the students in the study abroad context have a lot of interactions with a lot and a variety of speakers and in different situations, contexts, etc. We can also teach pragmatics. There's quite a lot of research now that says that teaching pragmatics is effective across variety of contexts, demographics, treatment types, pragmatic targets, and especially if it is accompanied by activities and feedback, according to Plonsky and Swang's meta-analysis. Students can also work in tasks that are developed specifically to learn pragmatics, and if we have time, we're going to do one of those at the end. And also, my favorite, what I think is most efficient, is arranging opportunities to facilitate engagement with the speakers of the target language. And through those, we would learn pragmatics more or less implicitly. Okay. According to our recently retired Gaby Casper, L2 pragmatics, as any other competence, cannot be taught. So educators actually need to arrange learning opportunities for students to develop their competence. So here is where technology comes and can do a great aid. All right, I don't have to explain to this audience, hello over there in Zoom, right? That interaction through technology is as real and as authentic as interaction in face-to-face context. And it is also subject to socio-pragmatic rules when we're talking about context, right? It's dependent on the participants, their relationship, the activity that they are doing, right? So studying the L2 pragmatics of digital communication is as important as that of face-to-face communication. And I can actually advocate more, but okay, so how many, let's do this. This is a Mentimeter. So enter menti.com. You can do that on your phone or you can do it on the computer if you have it. There's a QRC code. Can they see it? Oh, and then take me out to me. Yeah. So, how many technology-mediated interactions did you have today before you came here? And technology-mediated can be with another person, could be with a text or a video, could it be with audio? Yeah. So, a number. Give me a number. How many? How many? Just give me a number. Oh, you can leave that, but give me a number. How many technologies? Just think first. Okay, I did 5, I did 7, I did 10, 20, if you woke up really early. Okay, and it's 12:20, so we're still starting the day. Okay, was people online able to participate?
Some of them are doing it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we got numbers in the chat?
We have numbers in the chat. So 5, 7, 20.
All right. Someone that woke up with the phone under the pillow. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can get to the next one.
Back to the.
Nope, to the next Mentimeter. So the Mentimeter. We decided we need a second screen in this thing. So you can, like down there, says where it says next slide. There. Okay. Now, how many of those in percentage, right, was in a language other than your L1? So you're an L1 Japanese speaker, how many were in English? Or if you're an English speaker, how many of them were in Spanish and Chinese? Well, there's 0, there we go. So just think of a percentage and give me a number in a percentage. Both streams, right there, 0, 100, 2%, okay? 50%, 10%, 40%. That 0 is really big. I mean, there are several people that had zeros, right? Frequencies make the words larger, like any word cloud. Do we have anything in the chat?
Nope, nothing new in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so large variety, yeah? But 150, 40, big 0. So some people didn't use their second language. Okay, but it seems that some of our students would benefit from being able to do some of these. All right, so we go back to the. Yep. Okay, so obviously we are using technologies and some of them are in a second language. So a lot of people thought that this was worth investigating, and there's actually a pretty big, a pretty large field of CAL, so computer-assisted language learning, and L2 pragmatics. Is definitely one of the smallest within applied linguistics, I would say, but you know, it has some research. So I would like to show you some of what it has been done, what avenues are there for research that could also, that needs to have more investigation. And most applied linguistic journals do publish things that had to do with L2 pragmatics and computer-assisted language learning. And actually, LLNT and Calico, 2 of the largest journals on CAL, do have special issues on pragmatics. So there seems to be a trend that pragmatics are important. People seem to be understanding it. So most of the existing research is into groups. The first one explores the realization of a speech act in a technology that already exists, right? So looking at, let's say, greetings in Facebook, for example, or giving condolences in Facebook. It's one of the last ones I just read. And the second group develops technologies for research or for teaching of L2 pragmatics. Most of the research, I would say about 90% of the research existing is in the first group. So already existing technologies, what happens in an L2 that has to do with pragmatics. In a recent survey between 2010 and 2023, Bahari and Lee found a growth on the publications of technology-mediated L2 pragmatics. The majority of those look at computer-mediated communications, almost half of them. Calico is the journal that has published most about pragmatics and technology. So if you want to go that route, that's a good venue. And computers are still the most research medium. 90% of the studies looks at computer. So something that is very underexplored, mobile technologies and L2 pragmatics. Yeah. These results are actually very similar to Chi and Chen. They did a meta-analysis in 2025, and they also found that 40% of the existing studies deal with computer-mediated communication. And those can be video conferencing, instant messaging, email, or social networkings. So they block all of those as computer-mediated communication. So the technology is mediating people that communicate. Okay, in some of these research areas, there is a lot of research. So there is about 100 studies on email, yeah? And, you know, with good reason. Email is really important. How many of you, raise your hand, have sent or read an email today? There we go, everybody, 100%, yeah? So email is not as easy as it seems. I don't know you, but when I don't know the person, or I know a little bit of the person that I'm writing an email to, I still have problems deciding how to greet this person, yeah? My default is aloha, because most people don't know, you know, what level of politeness that is, and it's very, very, you know, sophisticated. So, but, you know, do I say Dr. Isbel, or do I say, you know, which, you know, in my case, for example, a lot of students call me Dr. Marta. Yeah, it may have only to do with how difficult my last name is for them, right? So is that polite? They're using my first name, but they're also using doctor, right? So it is not easy to do this on email, right? How many of you have difficulties like me? Okay, that's about 95%, everybody except Daniel. Okay.
I send a lot of emails.
Okay, lots of practice. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to give a review of what technology-mediated L2 pragmatics research exists out there. There's a lot of references, but there's a QRC at the end, so you'll be able to just grab all the references at once, including those 100. All right, so all of these technologies here, yeah, have been explored for their potential to promote intercultural competence or interactional competence, which are both part of L2 pragmatics. And across technologies, so through different technologies, the research supports that these spaces facilitate learners' development of cross-cultural understanding, the development of their own culture understanding, and also the development of pragmatic competence. So it is not just that one technology serves for it, but this is across different technologies. So as we have seen in for email, CMC, computer-mediated communication, that 40% of studies, right? These are some of them. They are, CMC is the most studied form of technology. And what we know is that it does facilitate opportunities for the development of interactional competence and other socio-pragmatic work. These are rich spaces to become aware of L2 pragmatic norms, be able to enact them, and also practice speech acts that are usually not very common in our classrooms, right? How many times we insult in the classrooms? I hope you're saying none, right? 0. But also there's lots of, there's not a lot of requests coming from students, right? Some, but not very often. What about apologies? Not very common. What about amonestations? You know, scolding someone? Also not very often. So there are lots and lots of them. And even most of our students don't greet or say goodbye when they leave, which is just drives me crazy. But, you know, as simple as greetings and farewells are not as practiced as much as we think they are in classrooms. So they're really good spaces for learners to practice their pragmatics, but also to develop their own identity as L2 speakers. Being able to interact with other people tells us who we are and how we position ourselves in the world. Okay. Some studies suggest that not always students are pragmatically appropriate in digital spaces. So actually with email, there's still quite a lot of research that says that even advanced students are not very good at writing emails depending on what their L1 language and culture are. So there still need a lot of work there. Other studies say that language learners are quite competent interactants and they can use a variety of strategies. They can recognize pragmatic norms. So there's a variety still there. One key finding is that interaction has to be sustained to actually develop, right? So one email is not enough. One meeting with another person in Conversify is not enough. It's gotta be sustained. There's a magic number around there, which is 10, 8 to 10. So at least you need 8 to 10 interactions to start understanding the pragmatics of another language. Okay, so a lot of research exists, but like I was saying, most of them uses technologies that already exist, like email or virtual realities, to study pragmatics, but very few have developed their own places to learn these pragmatics. So some of those are some synthetic environments. So that is Croquelandia, developed centuries ago for technology by Julie Sykes, and it was developed for learners of Spanish to produce or learn to produce apologies and refusals. Again, two speech acts that are not very common in a language. So she developed the entire virtual space, and then students went there, and then she actually studied their data for her dissertation in 2008. Okay, if you see it now, it's like, totally like so old, but it was the first one really out there. A little bit more recently, Naoko Taguchi and Xiangfei Tang have developed this game for Chinese teaching of formulaic language. And the student plays the role of a robot in a restaurant and has to do different tasks. And they have a couple of studies of how it works and whether students learn or not. So it's, you can go and read on it, but they're very positive. If you want to know more about it, I would recommend the Sykes and Dubreuil and Knight 2025 chapter. It's a really good summary of how to use games for L2 pragmatics learning. Okay, we also have place-based games, which are designed with L2 either pragmatics of interaction of features in mind. This one was Mentira, where students would interact with avatars in geolocation phone. And depending on how polite they were asking questions to their avatars, the avatars would lie more or less. So, and would give more or less information. So if they were really polite, they would get really good information. If the formation of questions was not very polite, then the information was a lot more minimal or not so truthful. And students in teams had to solve this mystery murder. And it was actually done in a neighborhood called Los Griegos in Albuquerque. So placed there. So when they would arrive to the church, something would jump up on their phone and avatar would come up and say, well, I used to come to church every day until they killed my wife. And, so you could ask it. And then they would bring all that information in the groups back to the classroom, and they would try to figure out who actually murdered the person. Chrono Ops was developed at Portland University, and it's students that have to save the university from a biological catastrophe because there is no water, no electricity, so they had to find in campus places that can be sustainable enough to maintain campus. So it's very interesting too. The Center for Advanced Study of Languages at Oregon University has quite a bit, works a lot on pragmatics. So they have a few games. That one is Paranormal Pragmatics in Montreal. So you had to follow a ghost around Montreal. And again, depending on how you interact with the ghost will give you more or less information to continue to the next part. That was really fun. I played that one. And here at UH, we had Sunny's Dissertation, right? Let's Go. And it was also a place-based game, which also had interactional features developed in it. So very interesting. This department, SLS, is actually an epicenter of place-based or place-taking language learning, right? So if you're interested in that, you're on the right place. Okay, research on simulation and spoken dialogue systems is one of the fastest growing fields right now in call and pragmatics. And we have, that's a screen capture of Immerse Me, where again, pragmatics are important to get the results that you need in these simulation. Some of them are more sophisticated than others, I gotta say. So, the one that Taguchi explored, she looked at the difference between doing that in a VR environment versus a computer environment and how students actually learn the pragmatics. This one has to do with the pragmatics in the workplace. So it's also a little bit an avatar. This one is, you gotta select, so students are not talking. In that one, the students listen and select also. So we still don't have a lot about what happens when the students speak to a system, but we'll talk about AI a little bit at the end. Some references there if you're interested. One of the important things that they found is that one of the main advantages of simulations is that they consistently give individualized instruction. This is extremely difficult to do in a classroom. And in a bigger classroom, it's even more difficult. But a machine is able to give really good feedback to students and feedback that is individualized for their needs. So to me, this is actually the biggest advantage of simulations. Most of them found also that it may be the task and not so much the technology that provokes the learning. So the same simulation, but different tasks have different results. So it's not so much the technology, but what you do with it that promotes the learning. And most of these actually promote a little bit of explicit instruction when working with simulations. All right, virtual reality, of course, also growing. We don't have much research yet, but there's a few things here and there. And Immerse Me and Immerse are the two spaces where most of the research has been conducted. Not enough research to actually aggregate results, but very similar to simulations. And this is now a super cute humanoid robot that was used to teach requests and thanking to Persian preschoolers learning English. So they engage with this robot, class comparison student study, and they found that those children interacting with now develop much better thanking and requests than the ones not working with now. It's not super big. It's really cute. It's about this big. Super cute. This is a huge field, and we have very, very little studies on this, very little research. So that's the reference for now. And there's a few studies, but you can see they're not very recent, right? So there was a little bit of a peak looking at robots, and then suddenly went down. Why do you think that was? Yeah, AI came and robots are actually very expensive to build, right? AI is right there. You just open a browser, right? So a lot of the things that these robots can do, AI now can do, and it's a lot cheaper. So it went down a little bit, but there's Deng et al. Have a really nice study in 2024 if you're interested. All right, so here we come, AI. You can't give a talk these days if you don't have any AI in it. They'll say, she's from last century. Okay, so what's happening in AI and L2 pragmatics, right? Of course, we want to understand how AI and large language models work, right? Because we are teachers, our students are using it. We need to know how they are using it. We need to know how we use it, how we best harvest it for teaching. So that is a lot of what L2 pragmatics is doing right now. What do you think? AI, like ChatGPT or Gemini, are they very good at pragmatics? What do you think? Sometimes. Okay. Do you want to give it a thumbs up for their pragmatics or a thumbs down for their pragmatics? You don't want to. Yeah. Okay. Everybody's like, we don't know really. I mean, this means we have no idea, right? So, what has been a study so far? So, there's a few things we know because they have looked at AI pragmatic competence. So, in general, not L2 pragmatic, but L1 pragmatic competence. And there's a big difference between ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4.0, which to me is, I don't know if exciting or scary, but something. So ChatGPT 3.5 was not very good at implicature or inference or humor or even metaphors, right? And he, I'm saying he because it's evil, so it's gotta be a man, sorry. He is not very good at the quantity maxim, which means he talks too much, yeah? He talks a lot more than humans in some of these pragmatic things. He's good, or he was good at requests and refusals, but not for apologies. Another reason why I think he's a man. Okay? And he was not good with cultural differences. So, of course, we know that includes lots of bias, yeah? And that bias is in the training data, and therefore, whatever is in is what it comes out, right? So, but ChatGPT 4.0 has improved quite a lot. It is quite good at answering impolite questions, which tells you, right? It's good at what he gets trained with. So when he now hears an impolite question, it's much better at giving answers for those. It is more formal than humans in general. So comparing responses by ChatGPT 4.0 and humans in general, the machine, the AI, is more polite, which is not always a good thing. And some of the research, Chen, found that it is at a level of a high schooler on its comprehending intention. So at its inference is at a high schooler level, and it is actually at a school level for some of the humor, still not very good, and some of the inferences. Now, it is really good at the pragmatics of the academic context. Again, what it gets fed is what it produces best, right? So you have the research if you want to read more about that. Okay. Now, what about L2? How is AI for L2 pragmatics? Not a lot of studies. Again, I think those are the only ones I am aware of, and you can see they're all very recent. So most of it focuses on the possibilities of bringing AI as part of the teaching of pragmatics, right? What kind of activities can we do with it? So very explorative type of research so far. For example, the second one, Erdogman and Kitson, have different ideas for how to teach pragmatics to young learners. So if that's kind of the research you want to follow, they work with young learners. Akane suggests that in their study, they found that AI was good for targeting very specific pragmatic differences. So in their case, they were Japanese students learning Chinese. And they had to somehow become a lot more direct, and training with AI helped them to do that. Recently, Sime et al. Compare L2 students' learning outcomes, and this was comparing scenario-based role plays, face-to-face, or role plays with ChatGPT. And they found that there was a higher degree of short-term learning in the ChatGPT function, but a lot more long-term learning in the face-to-face function. And then also for refusals, only the ChatGPT group showed any learning gains. The other one didn't. So it is good for some things and maybe not so good for others. If you want an overview of the field, Goodwin Jones has a really interesting article, and it's not all about pragmatics, but it's quite a bit about pragmatics. Okay, so since we don't have enough research to see how AI could fit in pragmatics, I just asked ChatGPT 4.0. And so I asked how it can help language students learn some pragmatics of a foreign language. And I know it's too small to read, but actually, this is really good. This is very, very close to what we know from all the studies in pragmatic instruction, only that he didn't put it in the right order, right? But most of the studies now in instructed pragmatics, and it's probably the largest field within the study of L2 pragmatics, say that the best way to learn pragmatics if you're going to teach it is having some awareness raising activities, then engage in some type of task, or engage with other speakers, or engage with the technology, and then some reflection and feedback. If you're familiar with TBLT, does this look like anything you know? It looks like Ellie's model of pre-task, task, and post-task, right? They never made the connection, actually, but to me, it makes sense. All right, there's also other models of how to teach pragmatics, and this one was developed by the Center of Applied Second Language Studies at University of Oregon, and they basically work on students acquiring the knowledge, so socio-pragmatic rules, also the analysis, being able to analyze the context and use the appropriate language for it. Also subjectivity, or what we also understand as agency. So it's not just that you have to use everything, but you have to understand why you're using it and why you're using it or not using it, right? And the same thing, it's for awareness, right? Once you use something, what kind of effect that has? Do you understand what effect that is going to have on someone, and then you use it or not? Okay, so that's an interesting model. And also Stephanie Knights, which also works at the center, is working on her dissertation and creating another model, but still in progress. Okay, things that we need to still work on. So we don't know a lot of how these pragmatic features works in a lot of these technologies. So if you put arrows back and forth, you'll hit a really good dissertation research topic right here. Yeah, we still don't know a lot about how people actually perform politeness, how people understand implicature and inference. And if you imagine, LLMs, AIs, or chatbots, we know nothing about any of these topics. We know very, very little. So lots and lots to research in this field. If you want to read a little bit more about how we think the field is going, the intro to pragmatics and language learning with Julie Sykes and myself is a whole chapter about where we think this field is going and what kind of research venues are open there. It's free access, it's open source access. So open access, not open source, open access. And the link is in the preferences also. Okay, so I come back for the conclusion to the first question again. Why teaching L2 pragmatics? And now I'm saying through technology, because I'm convinced that that's one of the best ways to do it. So why? Well, because students can gain linguistic and sociocultural knowledge. They can develop this super important competence, and they can do this in technology-mediated environments, which are critical right now. They can get interactional abilities, and these abilities, these critical digital skills are now very, very important now. We all know that we are in a world full of misinformation and rudeness and selfishness and individualism, right? So how do we fight that? Well, in order to do most jobs today, although our society says that, being misinformed, rude, selfish, and individualist is okay, in most jobs, if you think about it, we need to collaborate. We need to be able to argue, to come to consensus, to understand inference, right? To manage face-threatening situations. So that is not going away in our working environments. And 95% of the working environment communication is actually digital right now. So it is super important to be able to do these things. Also, understanding the complexities of cross-cultural communication. Like, I said already before, this is a multicultural world. Doesn't matter what some people say, it is a multicultural world and we have to live in it. So the more we know how to interact empathetically and politely with other people, the better of a world it will be, I'm hoping. Okay. By fostering tolerance for diversity communication styles, learners can move beyond ethnocentric biases and prevent cultural stereotypes. And they can also develop their own agency and their own identity as speakers of another language who can make critical choices on their use of languages. And also, this knowledge allows them to get new perspective on language learning, right? Language learning in this way is presented as something useful, something real, something authentic that you need to learn in order to survive out there in the world. And also is giving you some digital skills that you will need out there in the real world. So hopefully we can convince people to keep studying languages so we don't get out of a job. All right. Do we have time for an activity? Well, we have 10 minutes. We have time? All right. So writing an email, as we were saying, is something quite difficult to do. There's different things that are a little bit different, right? It requires a lot of pragmatic features that we need to think about. So what are the power differentials between the people writing and the people reading that email? What level of politeness that requires? What kind of register? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is a hybrid in between, right? Also, what kind of greeting? What kind of farewell? What kind of request formulations, right? So if we follow that framework that I showed you before, right? Let's start with some awareness raising activities. So you can work with someone next to you. If you are in the chat, think about it and then maybe write your answers on the chat. The way we can interact with you a little bit too. So there's two emails, email A and email B, right? Okay, so with your partner, I'll give you 1 minute. What are the differences between these two emails and where do you see those differences specifically? Okay, 1 minute.
Sure, why not? I'm sure you've received both of these at one point. Yes. Oh, okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I think we're talking about
Versus
specifically that I want to talk about why it's so I wonder. I almost feel like
Dr. Martha. I know thank you very much for your share.
The first one I was thinking but the second one
The signature.
well, so
Okay, so that's a minute. We could talk about, if you bring this to class, you could probably give them 10, 15 minutes to really go into it, but we're going to speed it up a little bit because we don't have a lot of time. So are they different first? Yes. And people on the chat are also saying, the tone, the formality. Okay. Yes. Is one more polite than the other? Yes. Which one? B. Okay. Why? Why is it more polite? What is it there that is more polite? Anybody?
Well, the first one says hey.
Okay, the greeting, right? The greeting, hey, is super informal. Okay. What else?
Hi, Martha.
Okay, so how we address the letter, right? Also, yes.
the directness. So the first one says, I don't get why my grade's so low. The second one doesn't refer to the grade being low, it just says, I would like to discuss my grade.
Okay, right. So that one is really direct, right?
I'm free. The second one is where are you free?
Okay, so yeah, in pragmatics, we talk about making a message hearer-oriented or speaker-oriented. The first one is very speaker-oriented, right? This one is more hearer-oriented, which in most cases is more polite. Yes. The request in itself, is there a difference in the language itself? Yes, okay. So can we meet versus would it be possible to meet, right? Those are different levels of politeness, and that's how we realize politeness through language, okay? Anything else?
The signature too.
The signature, right? The thanking, it's also thanks, right? Versus a longer, more addressed thank you, and also the farewell, and even including the last name, right? He obviously does not know how many Alex I have in a class at a given time, right? Or when they sign Jennifer, it's like, okay, there's 20 of them in this semester, right? So yes, also how you present yourself and how much you make the other person work for this message, right? What we call in pragmatics, the imposition, the amount of imposition. So just to have to figure out who is Alex here and all of these, and the both requests are for the same thing. So the amount of imposition in that case is the same to come to office hours, but they are realized very different, right? Okay, so we can discuss this with the students. And now, do these differences exist in another language that you speak? Do they? Okay, so in pragmatics, there are universals. Politeness is a universal. Now, how you understand politeness and how you realize it is different. But politeness is actually one of those universals. So you can also work with your students L1 or C1 to see if these would be different. Lots of studies on email have found that most students do that. Some students, and I can tell you from what cultures, but some students do this and it's totally formal in their C1, right? You need to be direct because you do not want to take a lot of the teacher's time. So the shorter and to the point, to more to the point, that is what's polite on their cultures, right?
I was actually talking with Ayano about how I find email be too much.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, it's definitely polite, but in the case of the existing relationship with a student, I would feel like that's actually too much. I mean, A is a little bit rude, even in my book, but I would say there should be something in the middle that's a student I already know, that we already have a relationship. That email is more of the, I don't know you yet, and I'm
Okay.
extremely polite.
All right. So being too polite is also not good, because being too polite also marks social distance, right? So, or even something like sarcasm. If I go to my brother and I say, would you please mind to lend me the use of your car today? He will go like, what's wrong with you, right? So that marks actually social distance, can be ironic, can be perceived as, not wanting to have that relationship. So you can see how complicated that is just from one very simple email message, right? So I think pretty much every student in every class could benefit from doing an activity like this. Okay, let's keep going. So, I went to the chat. All right, so second part, we can actually teach students, right? A little bit of focus on form, if you want to do it TBLT style, a little bit of teaching the pragmalinguistics. So if you want to be more polite, more formal, this would be the forms that you can do, so you can actually explain it. And this is where research says that a little bit of explicit teaching in pragmatics helps, because many times the students don't know the realizations. So they could be more polite, they just don't know how to, right? So a little bit of this could help. And then maybe we can ask each student to create something that is more polite. Or, thinking of Betsy comment, maybe a little bit more polite and a lot more polite. And then we can discuss, well, a little bit more polite, maybe a professor that you're friendly with towards the end of the semester, maybe not so polite, or much more polite to a professor that you don't know very well, or to a place where it's not your institution, right? And you're still asking for something. And we could have students filling it out. I'll give you 30 seconds to try to go with your partners and get more polite and even more polite, 2 for each.
Yeah, so I think
Aloha, aloha.
either of the, I guess the question would be the intermediate way to or whatever professors.
Sure, okay.
And writing a letter.
What's my comment grade?
Yeah, something along those lines is a nice kind of little line. I like how she had it like restricted.
A little too direct, right? Or like, can we discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably also be, do you have available to you or what I did?
Could we review my?
I think the most polite approach is probably if it's possible to arrange a time to
What are you free?
Okay, so what about the greeting? How we do it a little bit more polite. Aloha, okay, yeah, aloha is so useful. And a lot more polite.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon, right? Okay.
Dear so.
Dear so-and-so. What about the last one? Thanks a lot. So we have thanks a lot.
I say mahalo.
Mahalo, okay. Continuing with the topic, okay. Thank you very much appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your time. Exactly. Okay, very good. What about we do 3. Can we meet tomorrow? Can we make that a little bit more polite? Okay, are you available tomorrow? An indirect way to get to the question.
Tomorrow to meet.
Do you have time tomorrow? Okay, very good. So you were taking away the face-threatening question. Very good. Something else? So much more polite. Would it be possible to meet tomorrow, right? Would you mind if I come to your office tomorrow?
I don't even know if I'd leave with tomorrow.
Okay.
Might you have time this week?
Exactly. Anytime soon. Okay, yeah, so tomorrow maybe even to push it, right?
Yeah, that's also with the office hours part. I think it's if you're in a class where you know that the professor has scheduled office hours, it would be appropriate to say, you know, do you have a slot available during your office hours is less imposing than when are you free? Because
Okay.
I will say, like, if I already know the officers, I know that you have office hours tomorrow. If you're available, can you squeeze me in?
Okay, something like that. So yeah, also building on that common background and knowledge, right? To make it more polite. Yeah. I actually have an email that I used to show that was sent at 9 p.m. on Sunday, and it said, "Can I come to your office tomorrow?" And I'm like, I haven't read it until, half of the day.
I've gotten a bunch of emails from people in other time zones where, like, I sign on at 8 a.m. in Hawaii, and they're like, I sent you an email 4 hours ago. Why haven't you answered it yet? And I'm like, because 4 hours ago was 4 a.m. and I did not check my email while I'm asleep. Yeah.
All right, so if we continue, what else can we do? Well, we can move from input activities or input tasks, right, to something that is a little bit more guided. So here is an email, and let's put it in order, right? So what would be number 1? Okay, B. What would be number 2? C. Okay. Number 3? Number 4? Number 5? And number 6? Okay, right? So these, if students work in pairs, right? There is communication, there's negotiation of meaning, we know they're learning, but the content itself is pragmatics content, L2 pragmatics. But we're still learning the language, right? We're not taking the language away. Okay, then we move into the engagement, so the target task. So students could write an email to your teacher asking to me to review your midterm paper. So exactly the same that they have been doing. So, it's quite easier. Again, they can work in pairs if we want, so that there's more negotiation of meaning. And then from there, or we can skip these and go to a different type of request, right? But it still requires the same structure, some of the same formulaic language, some of the same pragmalinguistic language, but it can build on that. And then we can have a reflection and feedback, so like the post-task part of it, right? So this can be meta-pragmatic reflection. So, what do you think of your own emails? Go and look at one of your past emails now and look at whether it was polite enough for the person. And bring it to class, we're gonna discuss it, right? For example, so critical self-reflection. We can also ask them to check all of those before they send an email, right? A little bit of a self-review. So do I have a formal greeting and a closing? Do I sit polite and refer? Yeah, so have a checklist for themselves. And we can ask them to reflect about their L1, see if something would be different. Why would it be different? Would be appropriate to take this English and put it in your L1 and C1? Maybe then it's not, right? So what is different there? And of course, we can do some peer feedbacks and review feedback before they submit it to the teacher, like any writing. All right, so we can also work with AI to do a little bit of work with AI, right? And after you send the email to your teacher, upload it, or the email you have created to send to your teacher, upload it to ChatGPT or to Gemini and ask ChatGPT if it was polite enough, right? But not just that, but I want you to get the answer from ChatGPT, and I want you to write a reflection about it, right? If you say no and what is not polite, I want you to think about it and tell me, do you agree? Do you not agree? How would you change it, right? And also write anything that will help you to your next email. What do you want? Individualize. No, remember yourself about your next email. So this critical reflection on the uses of ChatGPT and how ChatGPT works can also transfer to any time really that they use ChatGPT, right? Okay, what is different from what I think? Why is it different? Do I believe it or not? And do I take that feedback or not? Okay. All right. So with that, thank you for listening and playing along with me a little bit. And here are the lots of references in this presentation. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. I'm actually teaching a course on pragmatics, but it's in Spanish next semester. But your Spanish is intermediate level, you can take the class. A little bit of publicity. Okay, thank you.